All right, good afternoon and welcome back to our final video for influencers, where we will be looking at ethical factors and considerations that need to be made um, that influence marketing. It's very important when we look at, ethics and what ethics are. We can understand that it's both understanding like what's right and what's wrong, um, and how we as consumers maybe digest marketing material, but also for a business to understand, potentially maybe what they're doing might not be the right thing to do, but is it legal? Yes. Is it the right thing to do? Maybe not. And that's where we look at ethical factors. Okay. So ethical issues don't break the law. They're not illegal, but they still restrict marketing activities. Why? Because it's understanding that that might not be the best use or appropriateness of marketing material or strategies, in a sense. So ethics refers to the values and moral judgments of individuals. As I said, distinguishing between right and wrong, or what's good and what's not good. Morals are essentially what is right and wrong. So understanding like what we perceive to be something is the good thing to do or the right thing to do versus what is something that is wrong and potentially not the best thing to do. These morals and judgments affect the buying of, us, but also from a business sense, it's the behavior of marketers and marketing activities. So how it helps them either produce a marketing material or influences that marketing material, and then for us as consumers, how we kind of perceive that. Now, within ethical factors there, we look at kind of elements of it, but there are some main ethical issues that stand out. We look at how sex sells, and particularly the use of sexual endorsements to kind of promote a product. And in class, we watched the Sydney Sweeney the jeans ad. And you can kind of tell by like her body language and the tone of her voice. It is very sexualized and it's using her appearance and kind of femininity in that sense of like her body and her tone and her voice to sell the jeans. Product placement. So you see a brand, and we often see this in like TV shows, or for example, if we go to a movie, the first thing that comes to my mind is The Truman Show. But in TV shows like The Bachelor and Married at First Sight, they'll always be like KFC or like a random coconut water or something that you see the contestants drinking or eating. And then in the ad time, it's promoting the product as well. Materialism, so the feel and the desire and the need to, always have consumer good, like consumerism, right? And like knowing that like, okay, if I have the latest of this, like I'll be happy, or I need to have this and I need to have that. Stereotypes. And in class, we discussed the topic of like pink tax. So, you know, girls being pink and the boys being blue. And, for example, like razors and deodorant and those products in itself. Like, and I discussed in class, like, razors, for example, like having a female razor and a male razor, like it's very silly. When you might find that the male razor works better for you, or the deodorant of men's deodorant might be better than the women's deodorant. But why do we, feel subjected to having like this pink floral for women? And anyways, that's a whole other topic in itself. And lastly, invasion of privacy. So, especially how we use technology now, and we live in such a globalized world that everything is really connected. It's really important to be considering elements of privacy. Also, like with AI, like it's crazy those trends where you see people post on TikTok being like, hey, ChatGPT, like, create an image of me based on what you know. And it fully creates like it, and that's wild to me. But that's, privacy in itself. And we really need to be careful of what we're putting out in the digital space. All right, let's get started in ethical factors. So, the first ethical factor that we focus on is truth and accuracy. Okay. So, truth in advertising refers to the omission of phrases that would likely deceive or mislead. So, acknowledging that something, would potentially do that. Accuracy means statements that are made must be correct, and they can say this is true, this is verified, like this is a statement that we endorse and that we prove. So the main unethical practices: concealing facts, so advertising fast food products, it may make you feel like satisfied, and we see this with McDonald's and Happy Meals, like for kids, like, yes, have a Happy Meal, it's going to make you feel good. But if you had a Happy Meal every day, the damages to your health we could see down the track. So, it's those advertisements that might make you feel really satisfied and really good, but it might have a darker image as well. Exaggerated claims. So basically like talking a really big game, claiming that the products are superior to anything else on the market without the facts. Okay. So the term that's used to describe this is called puffery. So if you're to say like, we are 10 times better than the other brand because I said so, I have no fact. I have no like statistical evidence to prove that. So you're talking up a big game and you're giving yourself like a big ego, but you've got nothing to show for it and nothing to prove for it. And that's called puffery. And vague statements. So saying that something is low fat, what's the percentage? What's the specifics? It could be low fat, but it could be like the really small percentage of low, like, so making that kind of like vague statement. So technically it's not incorrect, but it's not wholeheartedly true either. Like saying like, and we spoke about this in class of, and this isn't necessarily a vague statement, but if something says like helps fight against, I think, what was it? When we spoke about deceptive and misleading advertising in class, we spoke about how Lorna Jane saying that it, helps fight against COVID, or you won't get COVID if you buy that. But if a product is saying like, will help fight against cold and flu symptoms, and it doesn't really have any specific thing to it, it's just saying like, it's like me saying like, have an orange, it will help you fight the cold. Like, okay, yeah, like it would, but it's very vague. Like, so we need to be specific in what it's actually helping to try and do. Or like, use these tissues, it will help. Yes, it will help, but what is it trying to help to do? An invasion of privacy. So the collection of data based on tracking web browsing activity. So like cookies, or kind of we always think like, oh, our phones are listening to us and they're listening to our conversations. And I might look like, I'll be on my phone on Safari and look up like, I don't know, a new pair of sneakers. And let's say I'm on like Hype or Style Runner and I'm on that. The cookies are then collected, and then I swear an hour later goes by and I'm scrolling on Instagram or Facebook and an ad will pop up of the shoes. And it's like, huh, but it's tracking what you're doing. So the collection of data based on browsing activity, we see this a lot with airfares and airlines, and we see this a lot with social media too. All right. Now, a good taste in advertising. If someone told you you have good taste, you might be like, yeah, thank you. Like, I really appreciate that. Same in advertising. So some things might be, you might look at it and be like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't think that's the right thing to do. Prime example is Kendall Jenner and the Pepsi ad, believing that they can solve world peace with sharing of a Pepsi, right? You look at that and you're probably like, wasn't the smartest decision, not a good taste in advertising, probably not the best move, but we see this in different brands too. So, good taste involves considering the social and cultural sensitivities, the market that we're in, your target preferences, and audience itself. So, understanding like what is okay in the market and what might be culturally insensitive or socially insensitive too. The perception of good taste is highly subjective, i.e., we all have different views and opinions, and we spoke about this in class. And marketers should be highly considerate of the audience. So, in class, I spoke a little bit about the Libra ad that happened where they showed it wasn't necessarily 100% visible, but period blood in the ad of promoting their products. Now, this you might see as subjectively, and as I said when we spoke about in class, some of us might think like, oh, so what? It's just period, like, it happens, we're women, X, Y, Z. But others might think like, oh, that's a bit gross to show on TV or on an advertisement. So in 2019, there were lots of complaints for the ad that showed menstrual blood, but ad standards did actually dismiss the complaints and ruled that it didn't breach advertising code of ethics. So that's a good case study to use that although something, you know, it might not be socially acceptable, that because it is good taste is really highly subjective, and we all have different views and opinions about what it is. We can see where brands, for example, Libra, are shown to not be going against the code of ethics. So that's a really good case study example to use within good taste of advertising. So basically, with good taste, it's just understanding like what does the market feel about it and what's probably the best thing to do versus not the best thing to do. And if you put something out, like think about it like, you deliberate posting a photo on social media. Like you think about it and you're like, oh, like, will this go? Is this good? Like XYZ. Same with marketing. Now, products that may damage your health. These are all about the concerns within products that damage our health and the selling of those products without appropriate safety testing. So, large examples of this that we see: alcohol, cigarettes, energy drinks, fast food, anything that will damage our health. But this is also looking at like children's advertising too, and understanding like, okay, the health to the children and making sure that ads are happening at certain times or they're not showing things or they're being mindful because it can damage their health too. But the main things that we look at are alcohol and cigarettes. And then also that's really big too is energy drinks and fast food. So businesses selling these products, they do face that dilemma of like, how do you develop a marketing plan and strategies for products that are really dangerous to your health? So with alcohol, advertising is still permitted, but it must be promoted as, using responsibly, and to avoid exposure to children, especially in those kind of like teen groups. So they're still allowed to advertise it, but they have to do it in a way that is a bit more responsible. So that might restrict how marketing managers utilize strategies in promotions. And we also see this with tobacco. So the changes of advertisements in packaging heavily affected. So tobacco advertising and branding have been heavily restricted. So what we used to see is just, the brand or the logo with a color. And now we see those images to kind of, because we don't want to endorse people purchasing these items because it is a damage to their health. So what's the response to that? We have those restrictions around marketing that we do see, because it does damage our health. But this poses an ethical dilemma to both marketing managers because, okay, that's their product. Their main objective is to sell it and to make profit. Yes, but there is a dilemma in place where it does damage health. So should we really be promoting it? Their main objective is to make profit and money. So they still want to have sales, but they need to do it in a way that's ethical. So how they do it is by ensuring that the packaging that's on those packets is a little bit, eye-opening, pun intended there, but like eye-opening to what the damages could be, which contributes to obviously decline in sales. Because when you look at a packet like that, you might think like, oh, no, thank you, and we'll put it away. So when we're looking at products that may damage health, very kind of like simple, like what's something that could damage your health? Alcohol, tobacco, continuous use of energy drinks, and fast food. So, how do marketing managers market those things? Because it does pose such an ethical dilemma. All right. Engaging in fair competition. Now, we kind of had this discussion in class about like, well, what's, bad about this? But competition is really good in business because competition allows us as consumers to have choice. And that is really important. So we need to make sure that we're having fair competition in the market so that we as consumers can access choice. So, engaging in fair competition involves refraining from one's power to illegitimately destroy competitors through practices. So, when we look at like predatory pricing, or one brand, potentially hiking up versus another, we want to make sure that we have fair competition, and we see this like, prices at Coles and Woolworths, they're kind of around the same. Like if you look at their home brand bread, at both Coles and Woolworths, they're probably around the same range. So that's like they're giving competition, and it allows us as consumers to have choice. So the legislation that we do see within consumer laws requires businesses to engage in fair competition. Keyword being fair. So these are things that, are prohibited. So we understand cartel conduct. So kind of like the mafia business deals of business. So if anyone is trying to fix prices or rig bids, or share markets, restricting other people, it's known as cartel conduct. So think about like a cartel being like, a gang or XYZ, and using those kind of tactics to make agreements, like kind of dodgy under the table agreements that would lessen the competition. So it would impact us as consumers directly, but it is unethical to do. Anti-competitive agreements. So having contracts or agreements that lessen the competition in the market are prohibited. So, for example, brands such as Woolworths and Coles, or, the vice versa of like Telstra and Optus, like, having that kind of like anti-competition, they need to have competition. It's very important. Misuse of market power, prohibiting businesses with a substantial degree of market power from engaging in contact that has the purpose, effect, or substantially lessening the competition of the market. So if one brand were to, ultimately abuse the power that they have in the market and be the massive big dog, it really puts everyone else in an unfortunate situation, and it lessens the competition, which is not good. Exclusive dealing. So this is where we see restrictions in place with certain brands and certain agreements. Now, one thing to note, it is permitted if it doesn't if it doesn't lessen the competition. Now, I have a case study on the next slide that we're going to talk about. So imagine you walk into Rebel Sport, and Rebel Sport is the only place you can buy. I was going to say like Asics and Nike, but if they had their own stores, that wouldn't help. Okay. You walk into Chemist Warehouse, and Chemist Warehouse is the only place in Australia that you can buy CeraVe products. CeraVe has an exclusive deal with Chemist Warehouse. So if that's the only product in the market that offers one thing and it's exclusive to one brand, that it's not ethical. It doesn't allow competition in the market fairly. Whereas if Chemist Warehouse has CeraVe, but Priceline has another brand that's similar, that allows for competition. So we do see exclusive deals and contracts only in cases where it doesn't lessen the competition. Resale price maintenance. So it's illegal to force retailers to sell those products at a set minimum price, as retailers must be free to compete on a price. So, for example, if ASICS tells athlete's foot you can only sell this shoe for this amount, it might put them in a position which is a bit hard. Obviously, ASICS wants to break even and they'll sell it at the recommended retail price. But, if it's at one set price or they're not allowed to do X, Y, Z, it doesn't allow them to compete in the market. So, for example, if it goes on sale at, Rebel, it's probably then going to go sale roughly the same price at Athlete's Foot and vice versa. So retailers should be able to kind of compete on price and set their own prices as well. And lastly, mergers and acquisitions. So essentially like two big businesses or two businesses like merging together, or one business acquiring / buying another business. And then they have like a superpower force in the market. So I want you to think, like, imagine Coles and Woolworths merged. That would be huge, right? And what we see then is, then think about like Harris Farm Market, IGA, or like any rent, like Aldi. They're kind of like left at the bottom. Everyone's going to go to whatever Coles and Woolworths has merged, because they're going to have like they're going to really wipe out the water clean. So same thing, like if Telstra and Optus merged, that wouldn't be good. Whereas we do see like Telstra acquiring, I'm pretty sure I don't know if Telstra is Dodo or Optus is Dodo. I'm not too sure. But one of those big telecompany, like they have acquired Dodo, so that will be like the cheaper, like, they've bought that company, they're with them. But yeah, brands really need to be careful that if they have that kind of merger and acquisition, it needs to be considered. And if potentially two really big businesses merge or acquire, one business or another, if it does reduce the market competition, then that's when we'll see action taking place. So as I said, with exclusive dealing, we do see this in the market, only if it doesn't reduce the competition. So in the beauty area, Mecca and both Sephora have exclusive deals and exclusive contracts with certain brands. So Mecca has exclusivity over Rhode, Drunk Elephant, and like historically Hourglass. Now Hourglass has gotten out of it. What else? I don't know if Summer Fridays is exclusive. I don't think they are. Charlotte Tilbury, I think, is exclusive. I'll double check. But 100% Drunk Elephant and Rhode are exclusive to Mecca. You can only buy them at Mecca. Whereas in Sephora, they have Rare Beauty and they have Fenty Beauty. You can't buy Fenty Beauty at Mecca. Likewise, that you can't buy Rhode at Sephora, because they have exclusivity deals. But the only reason this is allowed is because it doesn't lessen the competition in the market, because both Mecca and Sephora have competition with one another, because they have products that either one don't have or they can both offer. Whereas if all of the brands only were at Mecca, that would lessen competition in the market and therefore be unethical. All right, and our last point, sugging, like a slug. What is sugging? It's a sales technique that's disguised as marketing research. So the best way to think about it is sugging starts with S and survey starts with S. So if someone is trying to conduct like sales survey on you, and then boom, they try and invade your personal, privacy, or they flip the script, this is where we see sugging. So this technique is not illegal. It does raise ethical issues. So trying to say like, oh, like, how old are you? And what do you do for this? And oh, really nice. Oh, yes, you like to do this. Well, I would really like to sell you. How do you find this pen for the, and trying to like gain information about you and then trying to sell you something. You'd probably be sitting there like, I don't like, that's not the right thing to do. So the respondent is to be fully aware of the nature of questions and what the information is used for. So where we see this is like, would you mind answering a few questions? You would say like, what are the questions about? Like, what is it for? And they in hopes they're trying to sell you something. So it's kind of this like, think about it like sugging is a survey. So a sales technique that's designed to get information from you by using a survey, and then they're going to flip it and they're going to try and sell you something. Okay. So this is an ethical thing that we look at. And if businesses utilize that, then it is unethical. All right, that is our wrap for influencers. I hope these have been helpful in class this coming week. What we're going to try and do is match up influencers and strategies for your upcoming assessment task. All right, have a lovely afternoon. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you soon.